By the mid-18th century, North American European civilization had come to a halt. Its western expansion stopped at the Appalachian Mountains, and that civilization could not progress past those mountains. But there were a couple of weak points in that wall. One of those spots was Cumberland Gap. And guess where we are today? We're standing in Cumberland Gap. Join us as we walk through history with Flintlock Operator. For hundreds and thousands of years, the native people of this land, the Shawnee, the Cherokee, the Wyandot, the Iroquois, used this path through the mountains into Kentucky, and this path was called the Warrior's Path. In the late 17th century, white European settlers began to discover this path through the mountains. In 1769, the famous settler Daniel Boone made his way through the gap for the first time. And Daniel Boone was introduced to the land that he would become famously connected with, Kentucky. At first, the trail through the Cumberland Gap, which was called the Warrior's Trace, was kind of an indistinct trail that navigated through the mountains and through the hills, and it was marked by blazes, by signs. Sometimes it followed animal trails and game trails. But in the spring of 1775, Daniel Boone, at the behest of Judge Richard Henderson, led about 30 men through the wilderness down the Warrior's Trail and widened it, expanded it a little bit, and made it easier to follow for settlers and for other hunters to follow in his footsteps. 150 years of colonization on the eastern seaboard caused some natural resources to run low. The original wildernesses of New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and North Carolina were disappearing to a patchwork of farmland and towns. Even game ran scarce in the woods. American civilization itched to move farther west for land, resources, and new opportunity. Kentucky was the new promised land they were searching for. The Gap was the gateway to Kentucky in the bluegrass, with its lush forests, wild canebrakes, and prairies teeming with buffalo, deer, and countless other animals. This path to the bluegrass region was fraught with danger, but that intrepid pioneer spirit drove men like Boone, Logan, Herod, and others to brave the wilderness to reap the bounties of this new Eden. We're in the Gap now. Everything is still and quiet, not a breeze, just a couple birds in the tree. It's dark, foreboding, but hopefully there's a new life ahead of us. We're here above the saddle of the Gap, and we found something really cool. This is an overhang that would have been used by the Indians, the explorers, and maybe even some of the named ones in history. Now, I don't know if these soot stains are all that old, but you can easily imagine a party of Shawnees, or a party of the explorers with Daniel Boone, or many of the other famous frontiersmen stopping here for the night, making a fire right here and taking shelter in this cave. So once again, we're literally in the footsteps of history. Now, there's one more thing we need to keep in mind. The white explorers and settlers were constantly on the lookout for the Shawnee and the other Indians in this area, and the Shawnee and the other Indians in this area were on constant lookout for the white settlers and explorers who were invading their home and their hunting grounds. So if someone was going to have a campsite here, they would have to be very careful and keep a watchful eye, no matter if you were Indian or if you're a white settler. Walking through the Cumberland Gap isn't what I expected. It's beautiful, rugged, and lush, yet it's not something that stands out in the landscape the way the Continental Divide and the Rocky Mountains, the Blue Ridge, or the mighty Mississippi does. Its natural beauty humbles my mind when I think back to how this unassuming place, beautiful as it is, was the key to unlocking westward expansion. I get the strange feeling. I've been here before. Narrow forest trail, rhododendron on one side. I know we're not in New York, and I feel like for sure a bunch of Hurons are gonna come pop out of that rhododendron and blast us with a deadly salvo of fire. I don't know why I would think that though. As we make our way to the overlook at the gap, I feel my shoe packs tread the same ground as so many adventurous men before me. The earth here is covered in layers of leaves that have fallen between their time and mine, and yet, looking around, it's as if no time has passed at all. In the quietness and wonder of the gap, with hunting shirt on my back and musket in hand, away from the sounds of traffic and cities, surrounded by the wonders of nature, I could very well be in 1770, walking the warrior's path to the bounties of the bluegrass. When the settlers and explorers reached the top of Cumberland Gap, they could look out and see the vast expanse of Kentucky laid out before them. Now we have some rolling hills, and a few miles away we have another small ridgeline, and there's one more small gap to get through called Moccasin Gap. And once you get through that gap, you're in Kentucky proper. But looking out here, this is Kentucky. This is the Eden, this is the paradise, this is the promised land that drew thousands and thousands of people to seek a better life in a new world across the mountains. And yet, as I look out and see the tree lines, cultivated ground, power lines, and concrete buildings, I see the fruits of that pioneer spirit that drove those who walked through the gap. And I feel a connection to Boone and the other men who yearned for wild places and look upon the progress of man with mixed emotions. Though civilization creeps up on both sides, Cumberland Gap remains preserved. Preserved in the quiet, natural beauty that was beheld by both heroic natives and pioneers alike. In the stillness, among the trees and the rocks, you can almost see the silent column of painted Shawnee warriors stalking along the trail, or even the intrepid Daniel Boone, leading a group of pioneers with men, women, children, horses, stock, and supplies to a new life in the bountiful bluegrass of Kentucky. The frontier is gone. Where once there was natural beauty, where there was elk, bison, turkey, beaver in the ponds and the streams, timber, deer, and a bounty of nature that no man could comprehend, is gone. And for what? For the steel and concrete of modern man? Here the red and white man fought, and did not bury the hatchet for many years. They fought, died, killed each other, and at the end called each other brother. Those men, the hardy men, red and white, are gone too. The animals, the land, the men are all gone. Save one, I, flintlock operator, last of the frontiersmen.